Let's talk about the Indiana election. Indiana, you have this Jennifer McCormick versus Mike Braun. Mike Braun versus Jennifer McCormick. So Indiana is a super right-wing psycho state. The current governor of Indiana is a right-wing Republican. You know, it'd be nice if they would spray the Ohio River with some pesticides. So many goddamn flies and so many goddamn mosquitoes. It's maggot city there. It's the maggot river, the mosquito river. So she is basically making this entire race a referendum on abortion rights, which I am pro-choice. So a woman should have the right to choose when and, when and where, whenever the hell she wants to have a baby. Mike Braun is, not on abortion. He's against reproductive rights. She is for reproductive rights. He is against reproductive rights. The 51st and current governor is Republican Eric Holcomb, who took office January 9th, 2017. So the incumbent is a Republican, and it's looking like Indiana is a safely Republican state, which is despicable because Indiana is literally the name of Indiana is the state of Indians, the home of Indians. Well, where are the Native Americans at? Mike Braun essentially is the de facto status quo shoo-in. So when you look at Mike Braun, he just looks like a damn diplomat. He just looks like a bureaucrat, just a middle, of the road, a toady, of just some sort of insurance, just an insurance claims adjuster. So he's a bureaucrat and insurance claims adjuster. He's not Mr. Razzle Dazzle. He doesn't really say anything. He's not going to make this exciting. When I watch Jennifer McCormick, it's exciting, right? She's got those blue eyes. She's got that blonde hair. She's going to vice president, or Mike Braun's VP, the vice whatever for the governor is Mike Beckwith, and apparently he's got extremist views. January 6th, he says, was sent by God, which, what the fuck? Mike Beckwith says that January 6th was sent by God, divinely inspired. Hitler tried to take over Germany by violence too. He failed, but then eventually he got elected somehow, and then he was able to get chancellor, and then he just took over the whole thing because of that false flag attack. Donald Trump is popular in Indiana. Hoosiers apparently love fascism. They love American fascism. They love it. There's 7 million Indianians. 13% are in poverty. So that's nearly 1,910,000 Indianians are in poverty. That's 1 million Hoosiers. When they talk about Hoosiers, well, who's your daddy, right? I'm sure there's a bunch of baby mamas and baby daddies, and who's your daddy, who's your mama? 1 million are in poverty, so they got problems on top of problems. Inflation keeps on going up. Mike Braun, we can't be the police of the world, he says. He's against defending Ukraine against naked Russian aggression. Where's he at on Palestine? I bet you that's okay, right? He's got this thing backwards. If Russia invades Ukraine, we defend Ukraine. If Israel invades Palestine, we defend Palestine. That's how it works. If you have one neighbor and another neighbor, one neighbor isn't allowed to invade the other neighbor, and vice versa. We got to be on the right side when it comes to foreign policy. When it comes to domestic policy, you can hedge on domestic policy, but when it comes to the American, the presidency, but, their governors, I guess it doesn't matter as much, but it does show you where their morality is. So I'm sick and tired of all these motherfucking mosquitoes on the Ohio River. If Jennifer would spray the Ohio River and the trees along the Ohio River for mosquitoes, that would be pretty good. If Jim Bob, Mike Braun, the bureaucrat, the insurance claims adjuster, he's a stodgy bureaucrat. If you can imagine the most boring Caucasian that you could think of, I don't think that Peter Parker, Hamster Joe, it would make him, you can't make him any more boring. So just imagine the most boring Caucasian you could think of, and that person is more exciting than Mike Braun. Jennifer McCormick will protect the Second Amendment, she says, but she also believes in safe storage for guns, age limit for certain weapons. She's for common sense gun measures. She also supports high-wage jobs and unions. So these are great things, right? So we're talking about abortion. We're talking about the Second Amendment. She's going to scale back on the Second Amendment, and she's going to protect reproductive rights. She is pro-choice. He says he's pro-life, but when it comes to the Palestinian lives, when it comes to the 1 million poor people in Indiana, I bet you there's a lot of homeless people in Indiana as well. And then all these damn mosquitoes. What is Mike Braun going to do about these damn mosquitoes? Supporting high-wage jobs and unions. So high-wage jobs. We need higher wage jobs. We need unions. If you got a good union job, that means you got leverage against the corporation, and therefore you can barter. That's the only way you have any leverage. If you're an employee and you're just a at-will employee. They could just fire you whenever the fuck they feel like it. She's also going to lower prescription drug costs. Jennifer McCormick is. No universal health care, though. Indiana's going to stay sick. They're going to have to depend on the U.S. government for Medicare and Medicaid. She prioritizes statewide access to affordable mental health care, addiction services, promoting safety and well-being of Hoosiers. She's for keeping the legal immigrants, throwing out the illegal immigrants. She wants to get rid of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. She wants to expand opportunities for voter registration, increase voter access to the polls. She's also going to introduce citizen-led ballot initiatives. This is fantastic. So if all the Hoosiers was to get together and say, hey, we want to vote on this issue right here. I mean, when it comes to Ohio, when it comes to California, when it comes to a lot of states has ballot initiatives. Indiana, however, does not. She's also going to enhance civics. How about just bringing civics back as a class for high schoolers? We call it social studies now. We don't call it civics. Let's listen to Jennifer McCormick for a little bit.
Issues and work with who we need to work with at that national level. But right now, that is not what I'm hearing across the state. But there's a huge difference in their messaging, their purpose versus ours.
So you mentioned the idea of rights and freedoms. Certainly a lot of Republicans we talk to here at WNIT say, look, we're protecting gun owners' rights. We are protecting parents' freedoms not to be taught things or their children exposed to things we don't think they should be exposed to in the school room or in the school libraries. So we are protecting rights and freedoms. So I wonder how you respond to that.
Yeah, we hear a lot about people talking about rights and freedoms right now, and we need to talk about everybody's rights and freedoms, just not a small minority of people. You know, for us to really look at protecting rights and freedoms means we have to protect the Indiana Constitution and the federal Constitution that spells them out. And right now, at the sake of, for some to say they are protecting their own rights and freedoms, it's putting others in jeopardy. So making sure we're having an honest conversation about that. I know in our traditional public schools, I was a special education teacher and I was a fierce advocate to protect our rights and our freedom of our students. And, a lot of the options right now in education take those away. And that's just one difference where
so it's a little bit of Jennifer McCormick. Let's listen here.
Supreme Court appointments. It's about making sure that, I saw who was brought to the table in decision making when I was at the State House. That table's not large and the people look very similar. So making sure we are bringing the voices to the table that are the boots on the ground so we can make some really good decisions. Difficult. We've got a long way to go there, but the House is realistic. And so, working together with those great candidates down ballot, up and down the ballot will be essential. But again, we've got great candidates who are fighting for the right reason. They're wanting to stay focused on the values that people are concerned about, our rights and list of things that you mentioned. I would add education, as some of our most rural schools are losing the most money from the privatization efforts. So it's about prioritizing all areas of Indiana, making sure we have an incentive program, whether that's economic, education, healthcare, in order to make sure that those areas are compatible and sustainable. We can't continue the way we're going. We're watching those that we just see a lot of crumbling across rural Indiana, and that's not sustainable for the good of the entire state.
Now, I suspect in the fall we will see a libertarian candidate on the ballot for governor. Candidates such as Donald Rainwater have actually done quite well in past years. In part, a big issue is always the issue of marijuana and legalization. Some recent polls suggest that a majority of Hoosiers do support moving toward legalization, either medicinal or recreational. But there obviously are a lot of people who are concerned. What is your thought? Should the state legalize? Should the state wait until the federal government changes its policies? Or should we stick with our current policies?
Yeah, it's time. I mean, the rest of the nation is not waiting. It's time. We're losing a lot of resources to that. We're also taking away some of the healthcare decisions from individuals. It's time. Now, I'm not saying we open up the floodgates. I think we need to be smart about it, making sure that we start with the medical side of things and making sure we have a well-regulated system. I've seen where other states have done it and maybe not been as thoughtful as they should have, but others have done a great job with it. But it's time. And I've heard that from across the aisle, that the medical piece, especially given just where we are with
Okay, so medical marijuana is actually a cop-out. We have a right to freedom. She just talked about the Bill of Rights, Indiana, and whatever. So if you understand freedom, you know, whatever floats my boat but doesn't sink yours. There's 3 million votes in the last election with the Hoosiers. There's 7 million population, so actually 4 million are missing. You're going to have, you know, some of those are children, some of those are old folks. Old folks typically vote. So it seems like it was 66% turnout rate when it came to those who were registered to vote. But that's registered voters. I would say they're right at 50% turnout, if not less than 50%. There's 7 million Hoosiers, right? 3 million votes. Where's 4 million? 4 million people aren't voting. So a lot of those are under 18, but if they're 18 above, they should be doing their duty. 1.7 million had voted for the GOP, 57%, and 1 million voted for the Democrats. So that's a 25% spread. That's lopsided. That is so, you know, one-sided, it's not even funny. So basically, they absolutely hate, you know, the women's right to choose, and they hate education in public schools. When I look at the numbers of Indiana, they're 25%. They're number 25 in education, 41 in healthcare. This is compared to the 50 states, 23 in infrastructure, 25 in fiscal stability, and 19 in crime and corrections. They're not number 1, 2, or 3. They're not in the top 10 of any of those things, and their healthcare is pretty bad. So they're very sick. You know, they're very sick. Indiana's a very sick state. Education is 25, so they're right in the middle of the road. Fiscal stability, right in the middle of the road. They're a little bit okay with infrastructure, and they're a little bit okay with crime and corrections, but every single one of those statistics can go up. So it's very much a Republican state. It's right-wing state. Jennifer McCormick is the underdog, big-time underdog. There is Donald Rainwater. He's a libertarian. He got 11% the last time he went in there. He got 11%, and, you know, when it comes to libertarians, you don't. Apparently, we don't understand natural law. We don't understand constitutional law. When I grew up, I remember people saying that, well, it's a free country. It's a free country. Is it a free country? Because our freedoms are the ones listed in the Bill of Rights, the ones that's in the state constitution, the one that's in the American Constitution. So we got to hear a little bit about Jennifer McCormick. She's talking about enhancing civic education. She's talking about fighting gerrymandering. She wants to appoint Indiana Supreme Court justices who respect an inclusive and transparent redistricting process. And she says that they're going to govern, include working with the Office of Inspector General with the highest standards of transparency and accountability to inspire Hoosier confidence in their government. We will work with and fight for our public safety officials while holding them accountable for the highest level of professional behaviors and actions. Jennifer McCormick will allow local governments to basically cut up the Second Amendment, right? Local governments, city council, and magistrates, dog catchers are going to be able to take your guns. Violent offenders, domestic abusers, guys stabbed a son with a knife over dirty dishes. And I asked her about that. She didn't really say anything. He's not going to be excluded from owning guns. I think he probably should be excluded. He's being charged with battery, too. There was a guy in Indiana stabs his son for not doing dishes. So apparently middle-class people and the plutocrats and the oligarchs and the wealthy and the powerful, they don't understand some of the shit that working class has to go through. You're a working class person, but you got, you know, psycho dad there that's going to stab you right in the heart if you don't fucking wash your dishes. If you're going to, you know, react that way for doing the damn dishes, imagine if you talked about, you know, insurance, or if you talked about, you know, anything, voting, constitution, freedoms, any kind of virtues, the end objects of the preamble. Imagine talking about anything significant, talk about anything political or business-wise. No, you're my bitch, do the fucking dishes because I said it. The guy's 30 years of age. So what the hell? And she's talking about minimum age to buy a gun. What's the minimum age? If you're 18, if you could fight and die in a war, you should get all the freedoms. You know, once you're 18, you're an adult, right? Jennifer will promote the safe storage of guns. I have no problem with that. That's not legislation, I guess, just promotions. Like, hey, Indiana, store your guns in a safe spot. There you go. Universal background checks. That wouldn't have that shooter, Thomas Crooks, he had a clean background check. 30-day waiting periods. Repeal the permitless carry law. So she's, you know, chipping away at the Second Amendment. The U.S. Constitution is my gun permit. She's blonde hair, blue-eyed, Jennifer McCormick, Democratic Party, running for the governor of Indiana. She's on the ballot in the general election, November 5th, 2024. She won the Democratic primary on May 7th. She was the Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction. She assumed office January 9th, 2017, left 2021, did her duty, did her 4 years as the Superintendent of Public Instruction. She was a Republican, but then switched to Democratic. So 3 years ago, she was a Republican. Now she's, a Democrat. She's making, again, a big deal with both the Second Amendment and abortion. I believe in abortion rights, and I believe in gun rights. I like my entire Bill of Rights. When I had asked her, about the guy stabbing over dirty dishes, I also asked about the grand jury indictment, and there's a whole bunch of Bill of Rights. We should memorize the Bill of Rights. You had Abraham Lincoln that says that we should have a political religion when it comes to our nation's laws. Our nation's laws are, pretty awesome, pretty cool if you look at them, but if we're not even being constitutional, then people are just doing whatever the hell they could do, whatever the hell they could get away with. I also saw some black folks in Indiana that had cops harassing them without a warrant. They were just beckoning the man, and they grabbed the black woman and they pull her out. They saw some old video or something and they thought it just happened. And so, when it comes to, do you have a warrant? They didn't have a warrant. They just come out here and talk to us. Just come out there and talk to you. No, I heard how you knocked. I see you're pointing a gun in my face. I know what you're about. Braun, Beckwith, they want to take away the reproductive rights. They want to amp up the police state, amp up the fascism. Access to affordable care. Okay, yeah, that sounds like bullshit. They're all about health care. They need to be about health care since Indiana is a sick state. Very sick in the head, sick in the body state. Public education, water, IVF, services for our most vulnerable, birth control, books, comprehensive, rigorous high schools, local infrastructure, money, affordable housing, community safety. As governor, I will trust the doctors and other. This is Jennifer McCormick, right? So Jennifer McCormick is saying that Braun and Beckwith are going to take away the reproductive rights, but she's going to protect the IVF, in vitro fertilization, education and water services for the most vulnerable, birth control, books, comprehensive, rigorous high schools, local infrastructure, money, affordable housing, community safety. She says she's going to trust the doctors, other healthcare providers. She's going to trust women as governor. She's going to fight for reproductive rights. I wish she was talking about more issues. She seemed pretty lukewarm with legalizing marijuana. If you understand freedom, then, there's a lot of problems in America. And if people are self-medicating themselves, I think that's actually a smart thing. People need to self-medicate themselves. And if anything, maybe they should solve their problems, but you can't have a bunch of hotheads all the damn time. Every once in a while, smoke a joint, chill the hell out. When it came to Cat Williams, he says, if you're not smoking weed, I really don't know what the hell you are doing. I really don't. It's time for change at our state house. She's talking about attacks on K through 12, so there's attacks on public education as well. So let's talk about Mike Braun a little bit. Mike Braun is the guy who is running against him. He's the guy who's most likely going to win the thing. So here's Mike Braun.
On to my kids as well. We all learn the same safety rules. At the core of our belief is that human life is the most precious thing on earth and must be protected. Self-defense is an American right.
So he's at the
It's
NRA.
central to our nation's history.
Self-defense is not just an American right, it's a common sense right, it's a natural right. Who the hell would say that you don't have a right to self-defense? A fascist fucking violent bully would say that. So it's interesting. Some of the things he's saying is interesting.
Any other freedom we have, Indiana knows this. I'm proud to represent a state that respects the millions of law-abiding gun owners exercising their Second Amendment right to defend themselves and their families. Wasn't too long ago, town not too far from here, Greenwood, was rocked by a senseless attack. A coward opened fire in a shopping mall food court, killing 3 people. Thankfully, a brave young Hoosier jumped into action. He was concealed carrying and had trained for this moment. 15 seconds after the first shot was fired, that good Samaritan fired the last one, thank goodness.
So we do have a right to defend ourselves, and a lot of the Democrats, they have too much confidence in the police state. So the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And with the police state, well, they need a gun, right? So we're just going to allow the police to have a gun. What if it takes 15 minutes? What if it takes an hour? What if they're not there on the scene? So the person could do the crime and be the hell out of Dodge before they even get there. And if the cops are on some dumb shit, well, then they'll just, dick around, and then they won't get their damn job done.
House, and finally, Biden is going to have to reveal what they've been hiding in terms of that intel for all this time. That came from your freshman senator from Indiana. Thank you. So we will soon have more information. They got 90 days to release it. I don't think Dr. Fauci is going to be in a very good mood after that. I'm on that committee that interviews him, and there's only one problem. Rand Paul goes 2 senators before me, and I can tell you he's not in a good mood after Rand's done with him.
Okay, so Mike Braun there just kind of talking some bullshit. A little bit about Mike Braun. He's a standard bearer, right? He's the junior senator, so he already has power in the U.S. government, and now he's going to try to take over the state government. He's the next standard bearer Republican. So right now you have a Republican governor. He seems like the shoe-in. A bunch of Republicans just blindly vote Republican no matter what. It doesn't even matter if they're a Democrat. It doesn't matter if they're liberal. It doesn't matter if they're progressive. It doesn't matter if they're conservative. It doesn't matter at all. Fascist, anti-fascist. You know, it doesn't matter. They say they're a Republican, then they'll just vote for the Republican. Jennifer McCormick has an uphill battle. It would be nice for Indiana to actually pay attention to the policies and actually have a policy discussion. I wonder if there's going to be a debate between Mike Braun and Jennifer McCormick. If Jennifer McCormick and Mike Braun has a debate, that would be nice. Conversation on the issues. I'm looking at some of these videos, online, and there's about 100, 200 views. So really nobody in Indiana is even paying attention to this, which if you want to, get better with your health care right now, Indiana is a very sick state, sick in the head, sick in the body state. Number 41, well, that's at the bottom of the barrel. So they're one of the sickest states in America. Mike Braun wants to get rid of abortion clinics. He's going to undo Roe v. Wade. He doesn't give a damn about reproductive rights for women. So the daughters who are impregnated by their rapist daddy has to give birth to that fetus. They have to. No morning after pill. Don't take care of it within 3 months. You got to carry it to term. He's talking about getting rid of IVF, in vitro fertilization. Where's he at on condoms, and contraceptions? Are we going to have a war on condoms? We just had that vote, and they just said, that's one of those, Griswold v. Connecticut. It's one of the most famous Supreme Court cases out here, and it seems like he's going to undo that, which is ridiculous. Because they were saying the sanctity of the marital bedroom. You're going to have cops come into your marital bedroom and see if there's condoms. Hey, you've been using condoms around here? So I'd like to know where he stands on condoms and contraceptions. He seems like a right-wing extremist when it comes to abortion. Mike Braun, Beckwith. There was a reporter that had asked Mike Braun, you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the issue of interracial marriage to the states? He says, yes, if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, then you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. Why have your cake if you're not going to eat it? So, maybe you shouldn't eat other people's cake, but eat the cake, but not eat the icing. I'm not for sure. Griswold v. Connecticut. This is a famous Supreme Court case that says, you can have contraceptions, and that law is illegal because the sanctity of the marital bedroom between two private adults. We don't need cops rummaging through the sheets to see if a condom was used or not. Interracial marriage, they had asked him about interracial marriage, and he just said, yes, leave it to the states. What the fuck are you talking about, Mike Braun? What the fuck are you talking about? Leave interracial, whether or not interracial marriage is allowed, left to the states? It doesn't make any sense for him to do that. It makes no sense whatsoever. He's against black folks and white folks and brown folks marrying each other. Why? Why would he be against something like that? That makes no sense. That is something that is clearly right, clearly correct, and we're going to sit there and just take it back to the 1950s, take it back to segregation. So that's some dog whistling shit. That's some racist shit right there. Mike Braun also says Biden isn't doing enough about illegal immigrants. He just signed that executive order. So, what's he talking about? Coming from Mexico to Indiana? Get the fuck out of here. Indiana is literally the state for Indians. The name Indiana means the state of Indians. He's pro-Second Amendment. We don't know where he stands on the 3rd or 4th or 6th or 8th Amendments, though. Where are you at on the 8th Amendment? Cruel and unusual punishments. What about the 6th Amendment? What about the 5th Amendment? There's 5 things. It's not just the right to remain silent. We got other freedoms, too. The 3rd Amendment, do you think it's okay for soldiers to quarter in your house? Indiana is ranked 47th in annual wage growth. So not only is Indiana a very sick state, sick in the mind, sick in the head, one of the sickest states in the country, but when it comes to workers' wages, it's one of the lowest. So you want more money in your pocket, you want more money in your paychecks, then you should not vote for Mike Braun. Consequently, we have the 6th highest percentage of delinquent car loans, 10th highest mortgage delinquency, and 36% of Hoosiers are delinquent in credit card debt. So, my God, car loans, I mean, they're mortgage, so people aren't able to afford their homes, they're not able to afford, their cars, they're not able to afford anything. Indianians are hurting. They are hurting. The working class of Indiana is hurting. Let's listen to a little bit more of Mike Braun.
In state, and I'm glad to see that that is evolving, even in a way where there's some nullification to federal law out there, because that's an issue that I think should be discussed at the state level. I'm guessing it'll be a more important topic of conversation in Indiana, simply extrapolating the trend of what's occurred in many states across the country, especially those be an international thug, invade another country.
Let's listen to what he says about interracial marriage.
Okay. NWI, now we have Dan.
Hey, Senator. You spoke about judicial activism. If the Supreme Court later this year strikes down the right to abortion, would you consider that to be judicial activism, legislating from the bench?
I consider it to have been judicial activism when it occurred back almost 50 years ago. So I think this would be bringing it back to a neutral point to where that issue should have never been federalized, way out of sync, I think, with the contour of America then. And this basically puts it back to a point where, like most of these issues, where one side of the aisle wants to hum up through their own court systems, quit trying to put the federal government in charge of not only things like we did navigating through COVID recently, where I think that was misguided, but in general. So no, I think this takes it back to a point where it should have never gotten beyond in the first place.
That same basis to something like Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court case that legalized interracial marriage.
So when it comes to issues, you can't have it both ways. When you want that diversity to shine within our federal system, there are going to be rules and proceedings. They're going to be out of sync with maybe what other states would do. It's the beauty of the system.
Loving v. Virginia is
that's where the differences among points of view in our 50 states ought to express themselves. And I'm not saying that rule would apply in general, depending on the topic, but it should mostly be in general, because it's hard to have it on issues that you just are interested in when you deny it for others with a different point of view.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
So stare decisis precedent. He apparently doesn't give a damn about precedent, and he doesn't care. Interracial marriage. So the Supreme Court, we've already ruled on it. So the law of the land is it's okay to marry black and brown and white and purple and green. We all can marry each other. And we're all human, we're all people, so it's kind of weird that he would say, well, some issues we could talk about, but most issues not. Why not talk about that issue? What in the hell is he talking about? So again, that's a little bit about the thing, just a little bit. Where's he at on condoms? Where's he at on contraception? He's talking about undoing a lot of this precedent, a lot of these, famous Supreme Court cases, which gave us freedom. When they talk about freedom, they're talking about the Second Amendment, but we got the Third, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment. There's lots of freedoms all throughout all the amendments. You can find freedoms in the preamble, find freedoms, habeas corpus in the body of the Constitution as well. So if you don't want it to descend into criminal chaos, you want people to buy into the system. You want the civil liberties to be upheld, because if we're not going to protect freedoms, which is one of the 6 end objects of the U.S. government, also establishing justice, general welfare, domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, and perfecting the union. So those are that's the purposes of the U.S. government. So not only he's terrible for the working class, 47th in annual wage growth, the 6th highest delinquent car loans, 10th highest mortgage delinquency, and credit card debt. 36% of Hoosiers are delinquent in credit card debt. Indiana's hurting. Indiana is one of the sickest states in the union. So in order to perfect the union, maybe Indiana could, have some reciprocity, some sort of, get with Illinois, get with Ohio, get with Kentucky, get with, the states that border Indiana and try to perfect the union. So that's a little bit about Mike Braun. When it comes to interracial marriage, he's like, you know what? That is not a federal government issue, but since he's going to be the governor, well, now it's a state issue. So as governor, are you going to be okay with rolling back interracial marriage, you fucking racist motherfucking piece of shit? Is that what you're planning on doing there, Mike Braun, you fucking racist bureaucrat? When it comes to like the North Carolina elections, you have Mark Robinson, who's boisterous and loud, and he puts on a good show and he speaks well and he's got a nice speaking voice. And so Josh Stein is kind of the stodgy bureaucrat. He's a stodgy bureaucrat. He's going to be a shoo-in. People are just going to go to the polls and blindly vote Republican. They're not going to talk about the issues. It doesn't matter about the issues. These are not the only issues. These are just the issues that I had come across. So I am trying to encourage Indianians, Hoosiers, to have a more robust and comprehensive conversation.